Hello, we are now on to chapter 10. My goodness, we are moving along, aren't we? It's wonderful. I applaud you guys. We're doing great. All right, here we go. The next 5 to 6 minutes of chapter 10. So we're talking about the performance management system. We're now at the point where we brought our employee, we've onboarded them, they're part of our culture, part of our process, they're part of our team. It's important for us to have regular assessments in order to let the employee know how they're doing, if we have any actions that they need to take, corrective measures, any suggestions, any questions they might have of us. It's important to keep that communication flowing. So let's look at the 3 main purposes of a performance management system. The first being two-way feedback. As I mentioned before, we need to make sure that communication is always flowing. If someone is doing something incorrectly from day 2, and we don't do a performance appraisal until 90 days, 120 days, a year, then that person has been doing it wrong for almost a year now. We want to make sure that we let them know so they can make an adjustment. If they have questions of us, keep that open door process. Very important. The second purpose for a performance management system is development. We want to develop our employees. We bring them on believing that they have the fullest potential, so let's give them those tools to be successful. And the third being documentation. It's important that as we move employees throughout our process, that we document things, whether good or bad. It does happen that employees come onto our organization and they're not a good fit. If we have to make corrective measures, if we have to maybe terminate them, we need to have important documentation in place. Make sure that you do so if you have conversations that need to be documented via email or have in person. Human resources plays a role in being that third party in the room. You can also keep the documentation in their office. Very important process. So what is involved in the appraisal process? Well, it really depends on what type of organization you have and what type of performance appraisal process you choose to go with. A pretty common one is the 360 method, and that's where where the manager, the supervisor is getting information from most everyone that's involved in this employee's working relationship. Whether it's their manager, it's the front desk, it's security guards, whoever is involved in that person's job, we want to get a little bit of feedback from them that really alleviates the pressure and the common error that people sometimes make when they're being evaluated by one person, where we are not giving them the appropriate constructive feedback. There are some notes here as we move throughout the chapter about the different types of appraisal methods, the first being the absolute standard. Different types listed. What we are is we're marking or we're evaluating an employee based upon set standards for an organization. If cleanliness is important, we would evaluate them on cleanliness. If for your position accuracy is important, we would rate them on accuracy. I wouldn't rate you on the color of shoes that you wear or whether or not you eat salad for lunch. I'm looking for concrete skills, and I am appraising you on your job duties, your job experience. Sometimes that's an error for people, whether they haven't had experience in the performance appraisal process or they feel uncomfortable with the employee and they don't know what to document or conversations to have. A little bit later, we'll talk about the different types of factors that can distort appraisals. So the first that we just mentioned was the absolute standards. That's a performance benchmark. Relative standards. This is when we appraise someone based upon a ranking. So we would say that you ranked second from the top. You were first out of 5th candidates. Your widget sales were in the top 10%, whatever it might be. And then there are achieved outcomes. So you can give someone a performance appraisal based upon goals that they've set for themselves. If you're a car salesman and you set a goal of selling 6 cars in 6 months, then I would sit down at the 6-month benchmark and find out, how did we do? Did we meet our outcomes? I mentioned previously that there are some factors that can make it difficult to have a successful performance appraisal. The textbook mentions a handful. A few being that really stand out, the halo error, the halo effect, if you've ever heard of that. It's when you're letting one key aspect of that employee cloud the rest of your performance appraisal. So the fact that they are very timely is something that you would considered to be a great success in the workplace, but maybe they're not very accurate, and maybe they talk a lot, and maybe they have inappropriate conversations. But the fact that they're timely, they're always 15 minutes early to work, could cloud your judgment on the rest of their behavior in the workplace. Another one that stands out is inflationary pressures. Maybe we have set pressures or expectations for this employee that they can't meet, and that would be an inappropriate method for performance appraisal. Different types of performance appraisals I mentioned before. I don't know what you have worked with, what you're familiar with. A lot of organizations start off with a new hire orientation, maybe a 30, 60, 90-day performance appraisal, moving on to an annual. Working for the state, we have where employees are actually considered temporary until they are tenured. Teaching, you would be tenured again. So you want to make sure that you're taking care of your documentation along the way. Most employees are fantastic, have great things to say on their performance appraisals, but some don't pass the bar. And we need to make sure that we are documenting that as we go, both encouraging the department supervisor to do so, and then we would keep our own files so that we have everything in place in case the time calls for it. All right, make sure to do your weekly burning question, taking care of your quizzes. Hopefully you're well on your way to your final presentation. As always, let me know if any questions arise.